Hello, everyone, and welcome into another edition of the Computer America Show. This is our little pre-show, video portion where we start this up, and a few of our networks start picking us up. But the show itself is going to start in about 30 seconds. And today on the show, we have a company called Consumer Affairs, and yeah, they're going to be here talking about the massive DDoS that happened the other week. It happened not last Friday, but the Friday before that. It affected tons and tons of people, and also we're going to talk about many, many more things with of course Dr. Jami Barnett. And yeah, she is the Associate Director of Research over at Consumer Affairs. We're going to have a lot of fun. Stay tuned for a great interview and a great conversation here on Computer America, as well as some computer and technology news if we have time to fit it.
Your show will go live in
here we
5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live. It's America's longest-running national radio talk show on computers, Computer America. Hosted by national columnist Craig Crossman. Look for Craig's weekly column in your favorite newspaper. This show is being beamed nationwide at ComputerAmerica.com. Keep it here for technology news, computer products, guest interviews, and your phone calls. You're listening to Computer America. Computers run the world, and we run computers. Call us or send us an email to live@computeramerica.com.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. And we have a really, really great show lined up for everyone today. But before we get to that, I just want to make a few announcements. Of course, congratulations to last week's winner for our Logitech prize, the Keys to Go, a $70 value. And again, they won simply by going over to Computer America social media, Facebook, Google, Twitter, YouTube, what have you, signing up, liking us, subscribing us, doing your thing. And of course, they were entered to win that great prize. And that will be shipped out to them here shortly. Now, with that being said, also check out ComputerAmerica.com because that will have all the information you need for today's show. It's going to have links to all the articles and of course, the website for today's guests. And it will have links to all the articles that we talk about in computer and technology news. So if you're driving, if you're busy, if you're exercising, if you're doing your thing, and you can't sit down and write something down or remember what it is we're talking about, we're going to have all the relevant links in one place. Very, very simple for you to find. And again, that is over at ComputerAmerica.com. Let's see, anything else? You can, and of course, as always, if you have a question or comment or anything that you want to get to us, you can always email us at live@computeramerica.com. Or, of course, you can go over to our website, and underneath the Interact With Us page, it will be submit a question. You can submit a question there. It'll be sent to us. We'll read it, and we will respond accordingly, be it a question for our guest, a comment, or even prospective guests that you would like to see here on the show. We will do our best to get those companies here. Okay, and without dragging this out too much, because I think this is going to be a very, very fun interview, and it's going to be a fun conversation. As fun as conversations about, massive DDoSes and the way companies are handled can be, but it's going to be very, very enjoyable. So let's bring on our first guest. And again, their name is Dr. Jami Barnett, and she is the Associate Director of Research over for a company called Consumer Affairs. And again, you can find them at consumeraffairs.com. And for those of you who don't know, Consumer Affairs is a consumer news and advocacy group, there we go, founded by James R. Hood, and who was a DC journalist and public affairs executive. And the website includes consumer news, recall information, and tens of thousands of pages of consumer reviews. Very, very helpful. I'm sure anyone out there who has ever shopped on Amazon or Googled a company, you just know the value of course, reviews. So, Jami, thank you for coming onto the show, and glad to have you here.
Hi, it's great to be with you today.
Oh, my pleasure indeed. And of course, I think we're going to start out with of course what happened a couple Fridays ago, and we can expand from there. But why don't we get started with, of course, what it is you do there as, again, the Associate Director of Research. Just what are you researching, and just what are you finding?
Yeah, so I do a lot of varied research. As opposed to being sort of an expert in one thing, I am an expert researcher. So right now I'm researching flood insurance. There'll be some news on the site about that in a couple of weeks. So a while back, it was internet outages and the way that people react to them and the things that happen when the internet goes down.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very isolating. Like, I think a lot of people have grown used to being able to turn on the computer, flip open their phone, take out their phone, and just being able to connect to really anyone and everything in the world on the internet. So when that goes out, pandemonium. Like you feel very isolated. So, but before we get into kind of just what you're finding, but why do we ask the question, why are you researching this? Because consumer affairs, from what I can tell, it's more of an aggregate of reviews for companies and news on companies and news and features like the ones that you write. Like, you're not specifically selling like a service. Like, you mentioned flood insurance. You're not trying to sell a particular flood insurance.
Yeah.
Why is consumer affairs researching all this?
Well, we did some stories a few months ago that were very data driven, and to sort of see how consumers would respond to them, see if it was the kind of consumer news that people wanted to read. There was a similar article on the tire treads on cars that are on the road for ride shares. So we had people going out and looking at the tread depth on Uber cars and Lyft cars, to just sort of see, what is impacting our consumers' everyday lives and the thing that they do, and that's certainly the internet.
Definitely, and and of course the big news, and I think one of the reasons why we have you here, and it's very, very timely, is that it's the massive DDoS attack, and it's not just that people's internet went out. Like, it's not just
Mm-hmm.
the zip codes of this, and this. Their internet is no longer working. Like, this happened on such a large scale that it affected, I think, a lot of companies that millions, if not billions, of people use billions of times a day across America. So what happened? If you could kind of give us some background on what happened a couple Fridays ago.
Yeah, so there was an attack that it sort of works like, if there are just too many signals all coming in to the same servers at once, they can't handle it. And they can't tell the servers that had the problems couldn't tell which requests were real and which were fake. And so they couldn't weed out the fake ones, and then they just couldn't serve anyone. So major sites like Reddit went down, with people in certain parts of the country not able to access them at all. And what we've seen come out of that and the investigations into it is that there are hackers who hacked into the sort of Internet of Things, the stuff around our house that connects to the internet that we don't actually think about using for the internet. And they used those internet connections to send these requests.
And just real quick, I think a lot of people don't really consider, you just said yourself, the Internet of Things, the things that people really don't consider needing an internet connection, but of course it's becoming more and more common. Is there really any difference, I guess, to Twitter or to Reddit or to PayPal? Is there really any difference for, I don't know, a query from, we learned after the fact that it was a particular manufacturer's webcams and DVRs and routers, what have you. Is there really any difference between a person with a smartphone or a person with a computer, or or DVR, or a security camera? Like, is there any difference to that web traffic that they can really discern?
I don't think, if there is, it's certainly not in place. And I'm not entirely sure whether that's something that is possible, but this was the biggest, not the first attack of this kind, but the biggest attack of this kind. So there's been a lot of discussion about security and how we've been really lax about security in some of these things. So I would imagine there are a lot of people asking that question right now and trying to figure out what they can do.
Right. I had actually heard, and I'm sorry, I'm going to find out the security researcher's name, but like, there are advocates out there. We have people on the show, such as yourself, kind of advocating for strong passwords, make sure that, good usernames, stuff like that, make sure nothing is unsecured. But I mean, there was a security researcher, and you mentioned that this was the largest attack. This was a very, very large attack against a very, low-level service of the internet. This was a Dyn. I'm sorry, it's a Dyn that was attacked. There was a security researcher who, makes it his job to go out and say, "Hey, protect yourself, be safe, be safe, be safe." And I think he was hit with a larger one. Like they were asking something like 60 gigabits per second of data from his small blog/website.
Interesting.
That obviously he could not handle. I mean, services such as Twitter, these multinational huge companies couldn't be able to handle that kind of traffic, but they kind of made it an example that even a gentleman who makes it his living to advocate against this, it just showed that, DDoS and what happened on Friday, I mean, it's not the easiest thing to defend against, is it? It's just kind of, it's so basic in how it's done. I mean, have you heard from any of these companies or, really anyone coming up with a solution on how to defend yourself against really just too much traffic? It's not a flaw, it's just traffic.
Yeah, I haven't heard of any good solutions. I've seen a lot of discussion of the problems that got us here. And so you mentioned having strong passwords, which is very important. And I would say if you have, I know for myself, say my refrigerator can connect to the internet.
Right.
I would never think about changing the password for that because who is going to hack into my refrigerator? Would have been my thought prior to this event. We don't think about the need to change our passwords for some of these devices, but we should. We should change them to not be whatever the sort of default is.
Mm-hmm.
The larger problem is that with some of these devices, it's really hard to change the password. It's not intuitive. It's not like going into your iPhone and just changing, your little login ID.
No.
So it's something that we should be trying to protect, but it may not be easy for us to do that, which is frustrating, I think.
Yeah, it's, terrible, because we mentioned this on the show before that security is the antithesis to ease of use. Like the harder you make for something, the harder you make something, kind of for people to get access to, surreptitiously or, against the person who really bought it. Like it's not really easy to make someone verify who they are. Let's say if they aren't someone, but of course the person using it, they just want to turn it on, enter their username and their password once and never have to do it again. Just they know who they are and they know it's their device. But, like I said, it's not easy to just kind of say this person's good, this person's bad, without having those kind of walls in place that are going to make people either tired of changing their password every 3 months, or they're going to get tired of two-factor authentication, or they're going to get tired of having to answer secret questions all the time. I mean, it's not easy to make good password and good cybersecurity without, turning people off. Is it? Because, myself, and I'm sure yourself and many, many of our listeners, they may think that changing a username and a password, it's one of the more basic things you have to do. It's pretty easy. But, there's a lot of people who use internet-connected devices that are not savvy, that are not, that are still using Hotmail. I mean, it's not, it's not easy for them.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And I think we all have a person if we are advocates for information security and using strong passwords, we all probably have someone in our lives who isn't. And, we know our grandmothers that have their usernames, taped to the top of their computer and they haven't changed it since they got their computer in 1998. Those sort of things. So it is burdensome to have to do. And yeah, there's no way around it being burdensome at this point.
Right. And the only thing I want to correct about, earlier I was telling you that there was actually a larger DDoS attack, but it happened against one particular individual. That was Krebs on security, and it's obviously run by Dr. Krebs, who does a lot of great work and research into security, and he was actually hit with 620 gigabits per second of information that they asked for him. And obviously, was not working well for him. But of course, we're focusing on the one on Friday, and why don't you kind of give people, an idea about what Dyn is, and like why is that such a weak point or a flaw? Like, why is it that you hit one company that I think most people have never heard about, and then a lot of websites and services that they use every day, all of a sudden you can't access them because this one no-name company got hit?
Yeah, so my understanding, and I'm sure some of your listeners have a better sense of this than I do,
Right.
but my understanding is that it's sort of it has to do with the IP addresses and the little like dots that connect them.
Right.
And so it manages those and sends the right information to the right places. I think that's the way I understood it when I was like trying to understand what had happened.
It's not the easiest thing, but that's about my understanding as well. Is that
Okay.
was that DIN is a DNS provider, and the DNS is essentially the phone book of the internet. That's what people call it, and it handles, you want this IP address, these numbers lead to this website and this web page, and blah blah blah. But yeah, they attacked that. They essentially attacked the phone book, and the phone book couldn't tell people where to go, and couldn't, it was just way too much traffic. So, yep, that's what happened with DIN. But I say we focus on the Internet of Things because that's something that, this year we went out to CES in January. And I mean, if people are getting annoyed with the Internet of Things coming to your thermostat or your refrigerator, then I have bad news. And it's that companies really do feel that the Internet of Things is going to be everywhere. I mean, in the next couple of years, it's going to be in ceiling fans, of course, doorbells, of course, locks, of course, every appliance in your kitchen. I mean, the Internet of Things is going to grow. How much security do you think people should be paying attention to the devices that they purchase, or do you think the importance of security should be saddled on the manufacturer of these devices?
Well, I think this attack is going to lead to a lot of requirements, or at least a call for requirements on manufacturers to provide this. My sense is that a lot of the devices that were used, they sort of sacrificed security for cost effectiveness.
Right.
And so if you were considering buying security cameras, then that should be something you consider when you're looking. So it's really, I would say, sort of on the part of both. Companies, as long as they can continue producing items that have these vulnerabilities and they can sell them, they're probably going to do it.
Right.
So as consumers, we have to look at the information and do a little bit of research first, is what I would advocate, so that we know when we're buying something, I can easily change the password on this. It will be easy to update the firmware and make sure that this is a secure device.
Is this something that Consumer Affairs is going to be looking into? Because, it's one thing to actively monitor, let's say recalls of dog food or something. It's one thing to monitor, this company has this many complaints against it, but cybersecurity, it's not something that really anyone's kind of kept track of. It like in tech circles, it's kind of like, oh well, Netgear has good security. Linksys needs to beef theirs up a little bit. Like they kind of know inside the circle, but it's never really been a metric that anyone has really kept track of. Is that do you know if that's something Consumer Affairs is going to start keeping track of?
I'm not sure that it's something we're going to be keeping track of across the board, but I think that as the Internet of Things grows, it's going to be something that's discussed when we talk about those items. So you might not be able to go, I don't know, this is me predicting,
Right.
but you might not be able to go and search, most secure internet camera. But when you come to our resources about wireless security cameras, then there may be more information about how secure these devices are.
Makes sense. So let's bring this back down to the individual real quick, and we did mention better passwords and things like that, but what can consumers do to help prevent the kinds of attacks that happened in October? Because as much as it was, businesses lost their connection to the internet, and people weren't able to access big business, and it was Dime that was attacked, not individuals. In individual, like, consumer products were the ones who kind of caused this. So is there anything that people can do to kind of curb the size of these attacks, or anything else?
Yeah, well, they can do as much as they can, and it's unclear, I think, at this point, how much consumers could have prevented this, but certainly to change their passwords, make them, even if they're not a super strong password, even if it's not just, the basic one that your device came set with, being admin or 1234. So change it to something. And also, people don't need to have all of these devices connected to the internet, even if they are capable of it. So for security cameras, maybe just on their own wireless network, but they don't necessarily need to be set up to connect so that, but this goes back to what you were saying about ease of use. If you want to monitor your house from your cell phone when you're away,
Mhm.
it's going to need to be connected to a bigger network than just if you want to record what has happened and have it stored on a disk in your house.
Right. Yeah, that is, and again, just kind of looking at the products that people are going to start seeing on the shelves. It's, that's just kind of the way of things, is that the added functionality that a lot of these systems have, be it, yeah, sure, instead of having your webcam have built-in memory and built-in storage, and it's going to be able to record the last 10 hours, companies are, kind of more providing services such as, here's your webcam, sign up to our service, connect to our server, and we can store you the last 30 days on our servers for $15. Like, that's just the way that I think companies are kind of going, is that they see internet connected devices as a subscription model, and it's kind of in their interest, like, kind of money wise, to push the internet of things. Like, it's only going to grow, right?
Yeah, I think that it is. And so that should be something consumers should think about, how they want to use it.
Right.
Not just, do I want to spend $15 a month, but do you want to be able to watch this when you're away from home? Or is that not necessary? And if it's not, then maybe that's not a service you should pay for.
Right.
One of the other things I came across when I was sort of thinking about these webcams and how we can hack them was, and I didn't go to these websites because I was a little afraid, but there's a whole group of websites you can go to watch into people's houses where
Oh,
the cameras have been hacked.
well,
Um,
I'm saying that our main security kind of specialist, Charles Tindall, he has his own radio show now. Good for him. But he actually pointed me in the direction of a couple of these services, and they're kind of like Google, where you
yeah,
kind of type in like a zip code or an IP address, or what you want to watch, and yeah, there's just crawlers out there that just kind of find unprotected webcams, and it's weird. Like, you can find people's front doors, you can find people's babies, you can find
mhm.
crazy things, and yeah, it's scary how open it is.
Yeah. So I think people should be aware of that, and again, think about how they want to use their devices. And so if you don't want to deal with internet security, if you don't want to remember to change your password every 3 months, then maybe you shouldn't have a live stream camera of your baby going.
Right.
Um, so you sort of have to balance off that, how you want to use it, how much security you want to invest, and what the risks are associated with this, whether it's a DDoS attack or whether it's your home being streamed on the internet for anyone who sort of knows that they can go look for it to find.
Right. And one thing I want to kind of explore a little bit more, in the fact that this is a DDoS attack, and the way that I've been explaining it to our audience is that DDoS attack is kind of like, let's say 10,000 people all in a flash mob got together and stood in your driveway. People couldn't get out of your house through your driveway. People couldn't get into your house through your driveway. It's not complicated. It's just get 10,000 people and get them to stand around. It's not one of these other like Stuxnet. It's not like one of these other sophisticated programs that finds a security flaw and firewalls and weasels its way in and then sends traffic and diverts traffic. No, it's a very, very basic and simple attack that's going to keep working. Like unless they figure out a solution, and I've heard a few, but they're not widespread and they're not well in place. But I guess the question is that since this is going to keep happening, and until they really find a solution for DDoS, and I don't see one on the horizon, is there anything consumers can do to kind of prepare for something like this? Because I know, at least here on the show on Friday, like the first I heard about it wasn't the news or anything like that. It was the fact that like we actually couldn't get email for the first half of our day because of the attack. So
Right.
is there anything people can do to kind of prepare for internet outages like this?
Well, I think there's, as far as internet outages like the one that happened a few weeks ago, I don't think there is anything. It's also not, at least, the way I see it is that it's not essential that you be able to check your email or access Twitter or post on Reddit.
Right.
This is going to annoy everyone and frustrate us when we just wanted to go and look at, the awe page on Reddit and see some cute puppies. But that's going to be the end of sort of the frustration. The larger problems come from more widespread internet attacks that affect our ability to communicate in any way whatsoever. And for those, and we talk a little bit about this in the article on the site, is things that we don't think about, like being able to use our debit or credit cards. If the internet is down, we won't be able to do that. And yeah, go ahead.
No, that is definitely a big problem. Is that faster and faster, more and more with things like Apple Pay and what have you, trying to get a foothold. Cashless society is a term I've heard thrown around quite a bit. But what happens in a cashless society when nothing is transferring money? That is a huge problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something that, as we move forward, I think a lot of people will be thinking about. For the time being, I think it's a good idea to just keep a little bit of cash on hand, even if you're not the kind of person who usually carries cash or spends it. Put it in an envelope on your fridge, have it just in case there's a problem, whether that's a major security attack, across the United States, or maybe just something weird with your bank, or if the power goes out in your town and you need to go to the grocery store.
Well, there's not really a fine line. I think there's actually a rather broad line between what you're advocating here, and there's a wonderful documentary on crazy people called Doomsday Preppers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as crazy I think as some Doomsday Preppers are, and as crazy as I think that's the fall of humanity and the end of society is going to be solved with a bunker and 6 months worth of canned food, that's probably not going to save you, but hey, whatever, it's a start. But no, some of the advice that they give on there and some of the advice that you're giving, keep cash on hand, keep, of course, perishables, and make sure you have enough gas, all that kind of stuff. I mean, really, when the internet goes out, you may even see the end of being, or, you may see a stalling and being able to even do things like get gas at a gas station because they're not going to be able to, kind of run their payment system. So
yeah, absolutely. The things that, just because even if people don't have their own lives connected to the Internet of Things, if other people do and businesses do, it's going to become increasingly difficult to do simple things. So just as we might prepare if we know there's going to be a big weather event or whatever we think the case may be that would make us usually think like, oh, I should go out and make sure I have gas, get some cash, maybe pick up some extra groceries. That's just a good idea to do anyway. So the sort of precautions you would take for everyday life are also going to protect you if the internet goes down unexpectedly.
Right. And Jamie, I'm going to extend this to you because we still have quite a number of questions for you. If you wouldn't mind staying another 5, 10, 15 minutes to to have a little more of a conversation.
No, absolutely.
Perfect. All right. So yeah, we're going to start on another question and then we'll continue on the other side of the break. But I may have to interrupt you. But I think the next place that we can go with this is teenagers. And we have a question here. There was a study that mentioned teenagers camping tech-free for a week. And of course, some of the discoveries about that, because there's a large number of our audience that did grow up in a time when we weren't continuously connected. Like when you left the phone, or when you left the house, you did not have a phone, you didn't have a computer, you didn't have anything. Like you were off the grid as soon as you left your house.
Right.
But for teenagers and for younger adults, that hasn't happened for the past 20 years. So, having them camp tech free for a week is definitely something different to them. And I rambled on so long that we're gonna have to ask this on the other side of the break. But yeah, on the other side of the break, what did they discover when they put kids in a tech-free environment? And so, like I said, we'll continue on here with the Computer America Show. So yes, we have Dr. Jami Barnett, and she is again the Associate Director of Research for Consumer Affairs, which we will be right back with here in about 3 or 4 minutes tops, I swear. And but yeah, thank you for listening to the Computer America Show, and we have a lot more conversation. So stay tuned for even more.
Looking for a best friend? Brother Wolf Animal Rescue has your best friend waiting just for you. The mission of Brother Wolf Animal Rescue is to help build a sustainable, no-kill community where no dogs or cats are ever killed for population control, where true euthanasia is reserved only for animals who are irremediably suffering, or for animals who are truly a threat to society and with no hope of rehabilitation. Brother Wolf staff and volunteers go door to door, neighborhood by neighborhood, to educate citizens about local resources available for at-risk pets and to help their families connect with those resources. Brother Wolf's community-based approach to no-kill helps keep family pets healthy, happy, and in their homes and out of the local shelter system in the first place. For more information or to make a tax-deductible donation to this wonderful 501c3 organization, visit their website at www.bwar.org. Help to realize Brother Wolf's vision when no animal is euthanized for lack of a home.
Who's a good boy?
Hi, this is Craig Crossman, host of the Computer America Show. You have important meetings to schedule. Your company's getting ready for its IPO, and you're in charge of the PTA fundraiser this month. So how do you coordinate everyone to be available at the same time? Are you still using emails, phone calls, even text messages to schedule meetings with a group of people? How's that working out for you? Not so great, huh? It's a fact that every day, millions of people suffer from scheduling headaches. Well, with Doodle, scheduling meetings with a group of people is quick and easy. With Doodle, you can easily propose available times to each member. Each one checks off the times that they're available, and then you simply pick the time that works best for the group, all in an easy-to-read display that integrates with your existing calendar. Nothing could be more simple. Give Doodle a try for free, and like millions of Doodle users, you'll truly see how easy it is to find the perfect date and time for all your meetings. That's www.doodle.com.
Oh, coax is not a nickname for a double hatchet. Marty Winston with the News Tips Bulletin Review for Computer America. This time, the Silverstone Tundra TDO2E liquid cooler. When we found that our original liquid CPU cooler had disintegrated, we had Silverstone send their Tundra TDO2E, a squat, full alloy water block that needs no screws to mount. We love that they fill and seal their assembly at the factory. Dual 120 millimeter fans and brazing on the radiator fins add up to very efficient cooling in a slender assembly that doesn't block the motherboard. Its two-host construction also simplifies installation. You'll need a strong magnifying glass to read the instructions and illustrations, but everything that isn't paper is wonderful. Bottom line, the Silverstone Tundra TDO2E liquid cooler is simply engineered better. Marty Winston, News Tips Bulletin for Computer America.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. Yes, it's 33 minutes past the hour, and we continue on with our conversation with Dr. Jami Barnett, who is again the Associate Director of Research for Consumer Affairs. And Jami, I hope you do not think it creepy of me, but I Googled your name to try to find a place where I could send people directly to read your articles. Of course, other than consumeraffairs.com. yeah, I kind of came up with your website, and the only thing I want to kind of point out about your website is that when you click on your link for consumer affairs right on your homepage, typo. So
Oh no! Oh my God! I'm so
the,
embarrassed.
the consumeraffairs.com. So, but regardless, we have a link in the show notes to consumeraffairs.com, where really it's the true place to find all of the articles that you write. And obviously, like we said, you do a lot of research, and the research that we were just talking about before the break was teens in a no tech environment or a tech free environment, which is obviously something that, I mean, really, if you think about it, let's say kids get their first kind of feature phone, flip phone, dumb phone, at ages 5, 6, or 7 for security purposes. And then they get their first smartphone at, 10, 11, 12, 13, whatever you think it's appropriate. And from that point on, they have tablets and laptops and other communication devices. It's very possible that, teens really haven't been without technology in their lives. So what did they find out, and why did they do this?
Yeah. So I don't know why they originally, sent kids to camp, but I think the researchers more went into a camp that existed where they didn't allow
Okay.
the campers to have cell phones or be connected. And what they found at the end of the week was that the young people who had been there camping compared to their peers had a much higher ability to read facial expressions and pick up on body language. And those sort of cues that you get by looking at someone when you're talking to them, that this was something they were better at after just a week. So I thought that was really interesting that they would, that's something that's being affected that we don't necessarily think about when we think about technology.
But my question to that is, how big of a problem is that if it's something that can be remedied with 1 week without technology? Like, is it and of course, obviously you did research on this, but you didn't exactly run the experiment yourself. But
No.
but I'm kind of wondering if, is this something that degrades kind of continuously? Because, like I said, I grew up without technology, and then I got my first phone when I was like 14. It's completely possible that my ability to read facial expressions is completely shot. But I mean, after a week, if it gets better, I wonder if it's just something that you can kind of turn on and off, or is there kind of a longer term effect that we're losing?
Yeah, I think my sense from the research was that this is less about less about the fact that we use technology and more about the way that we use technology, and that we use it all the time. So I think that a lot of it is, it's not, we haven't lost the ability to do this, or it's not like children are never going to be able to read body language. It's that when we put down our phones for more than 10 minutes and we stop looking at screens, we start picking up on things that we might not otherwise.
Very, very good point. It's not as detrimental as your child will never learn to look at someone in the eye.
Right.
It's not that bad. But and this just kind of popped into my head because it's somehow related, I'm sure. But I'm sure you've heard of many studies out there, and I can find them if I had time. But there's studies that people who, teenagers and just people in general who use social media are less happy or less self-confident or less, kind of, I'm just going to use the word happy again, less happy than those, than their peers who do not use social media on a daily basis. Like, there's a pretty strong correlation that when you see people on social media with their achievements and their significant others and all their accomplishments, like, and you compare it to yourself and you compare it to your day-to-day life compared to their highlights, people are not as happy when they're connected to social media like every single day.
Yeah. Um, Again, I think I'm with you. I've sort of seen these studies and heard about the numbers floating around, but I couldn't cite authors off the top of my head. But that is something. This has changed the way that we interact and that we compare ourselves to others. There's just so much more opportunity for everyone. But I think teenagers have an especially hard time with it because they're teenagers.
Right.
Just of dealing with seeing what other people have or what they're doing.
Yeah, and like I said, it was about the comparing, people's highlights, because you're not going to put stub my toe on the coffee table and now it hurts for the next 7 hours. Well, you might put that on Twitter, but you won't put it on Facebook. But yeah, you don't, like, you only compare like the good things that are happening to people compared to your everything.
Right. And so, again, just putting things down and being with people more in the moment, I think, as the campers were, is something. You're still going to see those things. Your kids are still going to see those things when they do log on, but it gives them a little bit more realistic sense of what everyday life is just sort of like, and they're not immersed in just those highlights.
Well, yeah, and it says here that people said they've liked this. People said that they would like to travel to a place with no internet, but and of course, but we could just disconnect. So, of course, how can people reduce screen time in our daily lives? Because, I think this happens in the workforce a lot, and of course, teenagers, they just kind of naturally gravitate to being continuously entertained. I mean, between Netflix, social media, YouTube, what have you. People, and of course, in the workforce, your boss expects you to work 9 to 5 and then be able to answer emails from the time you go to bed until the time you wake up, and every hour in between. Uh, is there any way that we can kind of reduce screen time, because heaven knows it's so available?
Yeah, it is. With our phones and the internet in our pocket all the time, not an addiction. I mean, I think some people would certainly say that, but I think it's a habit that
Right.
we pull out our phone to check, what's happening on Facebook, what is getting posted on Twitter. I've heard some really interesting ideas and sort of came across them when I was reading. And I think the one that was my favorite was that if you're, out to dinner with a group, and this, wouldn't necessarily work for everyone, but that everyone puts their phone on the table face down. And if someone checks it before your meal is over, then they have to pay for everyone's dinner.
I've heard that. I've definitely heard that one.
And I just think that's a really fun way to do it, and sort of, make it a challenge to not pick up your phone. There are some great apps and tools for, your computer that you can sort of lock down your browser from certain sites. Those are more geared towards productivity and trying to actually get work done instead of checking email. But I think you can apply the same principles. So if you, just say, I'm going to not look at my phone for the next hour, or, however long is good for you, or during this event, to sort of set that goal and see how long you can make it, and make it sort of a game for yourself.
Yeah, and of course, you mentioned the placing the phone, and kind of what I think what is at that point. Of course, there's a monetary penalty. You have to pay for all your friends' meals. Oh no!
Mhm.
But there's also peer pressure, and I'm sure there's something there where, well, if none of my friends are checking their phone, then maybe it would be rude. Then I'll be out of the group because I'll be sitting there on my phone while everyone else is kind of talking together. There is things like that. I do find it enjoyable that you mentioned apps. And it's like there's an app for everything. There's an app
Right.
for using apps.
Mhm.
Like, wow, okay.
Yeah, there's an app to help you stop using apps. I mean,
Yeah, it's kind of that point. But you're saying that it's going to have to be a conscious decision, because I think at this point, when it's unconscious, when it's just kind of, well, it is what it is. I use my phone when I want to, and I don't think about when I use it or when I don't. Time and time again, it's proven to be that people really do enjoy being entertained. People really do enjoy the fact that they can pick up their phone. I know I check Reddit, maybe every hour or so. Just it's like, oh, what's on the front page? Oh, nothing. Okay. And then an hour later, oh, what's on the front page? Like I do it all the time. It's so it tickles that part of your brain that craves to learn, that really craves to be engaged. But you're saying that we should, and again, you're the researcher here. Do you know if there's any kind of benefit to really putting down your phone? Because it's one thing, it's like, oh, it's not healthy, quote unquote, or it's not good for you, quote unquote, or it's not productive, quote unquote. But is there any kind of like tangible benefit, much like the kids in the camp, that people can kind of expect when they do something like this?
yeah. So one of the things I found really interesting when I was working on this article is that people's sentence structure changes when they are having a conversation with someone and they're using technology versus when they're not. And so they're having shorter conversations. They're using shorter sentences. They're not talking about subjects or topics that are as deep. And so one tangible benefit of putting it down, during dinner with your friends is that you're probably going to have a better conversation from even just the most basic linguistic level if you focus on the people in front of you instead of whatever is happening on Reddit at that moment. So that's one sort of tangible benefit. There are things, I'm terrible. I play with my phone before I go to sleep. And, no matter how many studies I read that tell me that I shouldn't do this and it's going to make it harder for me to sleep and my sleep won't be as good because of the blue light and my brain will be active, like I still do it.
Right.
So I think there are times and places when, there's a really good benefit, but we like to be entertained. We like to know what is going on around us. We like to feel connected.
I can hear it a bit in your voice, and I guess I'll be the first one to say it, that I am a complete hypocrite when we talk about stuff like this, because before I go to bed, I lay down in bed, I put on Netflix, I pull out my phone, and I browse social media / Reddit / just I am probably more focused and more engaged the minutes before I go to bed than any other time of my day. And it's and again, like I said, I don't think it's an addiction. It's just, it's very, I don't want to say, I don't even want to say calming. It's just very enjoyable to be engaged.
Yeah, and it's just, you aren't focused on anyone else around you. It's a very time for me, at least, I'm in my own head while I'm looking at this or doing whatever. And so, it is enjoyable.
Right.
We do it because we like it. We wouldn't play with our phones all the time if we didn't find pleasure in it.
Right.
So it is hard,
but might be worth the trade-offs. According to studies that you've read, studies that I've read, it's
yes.
There's definitely benefits to, from an evolution point, if nothing else. There are times when you just need to sit down in a quiet room and sleep or meditate or relax, just everything off. And so I have seen those. I have not followed them, but I'm sure one day it will catch up to me. All right. So with that being said, why don't we bring it back, a little bit further from the personal level to, again, the internet connection thing. We talked about the DDoS earlier, but I think the internet has already become sort of a utility. The FCC is trying to, has already reclassified it as a Title II, Title III, or something like that utility, and it's under the same regulation as, say, kind of cable television, things like that. It's not just an amenity, because, if you're looking for a job, you have to have the internet. There's really no other way to really do it. So with it playing a bigger part of our everyday, and you mentioned that you kind of have to be, preparing for it like a giant storm when it goes out. Has there ever been an instance where, let's say, a corporate or government entity has done their best to completely shut off the internet? Because, over in the Middle East, we hear, we cover these on the show whenever they happen, that governments do have the ability to hit a switch and shut off internet connection in an entire country. Is that something that is even possible nowadays?
Yeah, it is something that's possible and something that governments continue to do. And the piece I talked about in the article was during the Arab Spring, and governments that would shut the internet down and trying to prevent citizens from seeing, certain protests were happening, trying to control what was happening in the streets. And in those cases, it had sort of a backlash in that, when people couldn't access the internet any longer, then they actually went into the streets to see what was happening.
I can't imagine a good PR, we've done PR here on the show. I can't imagine a good PR twist you can put on taking down the internet. Like there's not, it's like, oh, don't worry, folks, we're protecting you from learning things. It's good. Like, it's very hard to justify turning off the internet.
Yeah, I don't think that it is justifiable in,
in most, if not all, situations, because when people
Right.
are desperately looking for, and yet, like the reason I hear a lot of governments kind of say during it is that we want to, and it's terrorism. It's very very
Right.
common, but they want to prevent the terrorists from being able to communicate with one another. And we saw this in the Paris attacks, where they shut down Twitter and social media and things like that in Paris when when the shootings and the bombings were happening in Paris. And then later they find out that they were using flip phones, or feature phone, like burner phones.
Yeah.
So when they say that we want to reduce the amount of communication that kind of terrorists have, really you're just shutting down communication for everyone, but the terrorists are probably going to have a plan B that other people will not.
Yeah, I think that that's a good point. And I'm also going to answer here, take the time, because I've just been dying for time to talk about this. And in all of my interviews, no one has said it. So I'm going to take this chance to talk about undersea cables. And is that something that you guys talk about on your show?
We only talk about them when some fisherman plops an anchor down on them.
Yeah. See, this is the sort of thing I think that, it's along the same lines of not the government, taking it down intentionally, but there's been, so I came across it in my research that the Northern Mariana Islands, which is a U.S. territory, one of their undersea cable in 2015 was severed by, activity under the water during a storm. And they were without the ability to communicate with people not on the islands for 3 weeks.
Yeah, crazy.
So this is something that, whether it's a government or a big storm or whatever, is possible.
I don't, and really, internet infrastructure is a mystery to so many people, myself included, that it's such a large thing that we all kind of take for granted. And someone had to put this out there, but I get the feeling when I talk to people, and I talk to people in everyday life, that I ask them, how do you think Europe communicates with the US in terms of internet? It's like, oh, satellites. We have tons of satellites up there. And I guess they think that all this great communication we have and how fast it is, they think that all the information is beamed up to satellites and is then beamed down all over the world. That's not it. It's these cables, right?
Yeah. So it's about, it's somewhere in the 90 to 98%, depending on what sources you're looking at, of traffic between continents goes on these cables. So it's not on satellites. That's just crazy. There aren't that many of them.
Right.
Some of them have been around for a really long time. You can go online, you can see sharks biting these cables.
Yeah.
All sorts of ways that they could get damaged.
You can even see a diagram where they have they draw the lines on maps exactly where they are. I mean, they're not hard to find, and they have to be well documented so that boat anchors don't drop on them, or people don't accidentally drill for oil and break one of the lines. But no, they're all over the place. They're owned by many different companies. They're owned by private organizations more often than not. The last one we just talked about was the Google's Faster cable, or there was a different name for Google's cable. But I mean, it's improving all the time. But yeah, it's I'm surprised no one's, well, not really surprised no one's brought it up, but to cut off, there was a time, and I'm sure you know about this incident better than I do, but there was a time when the entire continent of Africa lost their internet connection because one or two cables were cut. If you want to turn the internet off, go out there with a chainsaw or something and cut these things.
Yeah. Just a few years ago, off Egypt, there were 3 guys. I don't know exactly what kind of technology they used, but it was just 3 guys in, scuba diving gear, went out and severed a cable. And for areas of Egypt and some of the surrounding countries, internet usage was down by 60%, or internet access was down by 60%. And this was just one cable with 3 guys out there, not far offshore.
And to kind of, and it's kind of hard to put the dollar amount of kind of lost commerce that goes on when something like that happens, but undoubtedly 3 guys cause hundreds of millions of dollars worth of damage. to that one cable, not because the cable costs a lot, and the cable, I'm sure, is very, very long, very, very hard to make, but the amount of commerce and traffic and, kind of information that flows through those cables, that's worth more than the cables themselves.
Oh, yeah. So I think globally the estimates are about $10 trillion daily is moved in economic transactions via these cables. And so it's just this huge number. And until just a couple of months ago, I think in September, the FCC had very, very little regulations. Companies didn't even have to report when there was an outage on one of these things.
Right. And that was going to be my next question, was that, the U.S. government or whatever government usually comes out and says, whenever there's a state-sponsored hacking, or China or Russia more often than not, but the U.S. government. But for everyday things, you get home, you try to turn on Netflix, it takes a long time. You go, you pull out your smartphone, you use your LTE network, and who's really monitoring internet outages? Because no one government organization is going to be able to keep track of the dozens upon dozens of internet providers. Is there anyone kind of keeping track of it, or is it the government?
I mean, it is to a large extent, especially with some of things like this. The government is the only one who really is watching, and even to some extent, the infrastructure isn't being monitored in the ways that I expected or would have expected before I started doing this research.
You'd think that there'd just be some kind of, I don't know, bar graph, flow chart, timeline that would just kind of show traffic over time, and from every provider, because we talk about the Internet of Things and how when you connect things to the internet, you get more data through sensors. And you think that the internet itself would be loaded with sensors and would be loaded with these things that would give you such precise and accurate and widespread information. Are you saying that that isn't really happening for the internet services themselves?
I don't think that it is. It certainly isn't to the extent I assumed it was.
Right.
That, you can go online, you can certainly Google, is Netflix down? And you can see tons of reports of places where people aren't being able to access Netflix. But as far as the infrastructure, and if there's a problem somewhere, the system is so complex and it's been built up over so many years in such fragmented pieces that there isn't a single way to just tell,
Right.
from what I've seen in my research.
Yeah, and of course the website that I usually go is Google, and then if Google doesn't pop up, then the world is dead. But if Google pops up and it says, is Netflix down, and then it pops up a website, I think it's isitdown.com or something.
Yeah, something really obvious.
Yeah, isitdownrightnow.com is the one that I use, or Down for Everyone, or Just Me. It's very simple websites, but like you said, it's not one size fit all, because I can go on there and see, is it down for just me? And there may be 900 reports, but they're kind of checkerboarded all over the U.S. It's not, a blanket kind of thing. So not the easiest thing to keep track of.
Yeah, I think it's a big web. We think about it as the web, but it is.
Right.
And that's hard to track.
Right. So, and again, we are talking to, I get this right, Dr. Jami Barnett. We have about 1 or 2 more minutes here with you. Really great conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show with us. But you mentioned that, obviously you mentioned the article that I wrote, the article that I researched, the research that I did. Mm-hmm. Is there anything kind of that you're researching now, or anything that you kind of want to dig deeper into in the near future that you're going to write about?
Right now, my research is on flood insurance and how to figure out, with flood insurance, it's all through the National Flood Insurance Agency, something or other. How do you decide what company to use to get this insurance if it's all the same? And pet lemon laws. So if you buy a sick little puppy, what are your legal options? So like I said, my job here isn't really about researching any one thing. It's about digging in and doing research and figuring out what people need to know.
it sounds like a lot of fun. And just to add
90 seconds.
and just to add anecdotal, unadmissible, completely useless information, I know that we purchased a puppy about 10 years ago, and he had puppy pneumonia, where he was obviously from a pet store, pet chain, but obviously puppy mill. And when it came down to it, they would offer us a refund, but we know that the pet, that the puppy would just be killed if we put him back in there. So, I mean, good luck with your research.
60
Looking
seconds.
forward to seeing what you write up about it, but obviously very emotionally charged when it comes to puppies and pets. And
Oh yeah.
good luck with that. But yes, no, and anyone out there who wants more information, please check out consumeraffairs.com. And again, we have a link in the show notes to the website from our website, and it will be up there for the next 10 days or so, and then in the archives for the rest of the time. And be sure to check out the archive if you joined us in this conversation late. But Jami, thank you so much for being here with us. It was a lot of fun. And next time you have an article too that you want to talk about on the air, I'd love to have you back.
Thanks so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. All right, and everyone else, be sure to tune in tomorrow. We have a friend of the show, Marty Winston. He does our Newsday Bulletin reviews, and he is here to talk about his smart home and the home of the
10
future.
seconds.
Because it is 40-year house. It's going to be a lot of fun. Tune in tomorrow, same time, same place, 4 p.m. Eastern. Have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye. All right, we're disconnected from the network. And Jami, we're still on the video portion, but I just want to say once again, thank you for coming on. And really, if you ever find something really interesting that's kind of techie, or just anything that you really want to talk about, feel free to send me an email, and love to have you back on the show for half an hour or so.
All right. Thanks so much. I really enjoyed it.
Yep, and have a great day.
You too. Bye.
And bye, everyone else. Thank you for tuning into Computer America, and see you here tomorrow. Bye-bye.